Right now, generative AI commands a massive trillion-dollar market valuation and an ever-expanding footprint of raw compute power. Yet, as civil litigation mounts over AI-linked harms, there is no official infrastructure tracking the most severe outcome. Nobody is counting the dead. The blind spot begins at the federal level. The Centers for Disease Control has no ICD external cause code for chatbot involvement in a mortality event. Without a medical taxonomy, coroners and medical examiners have no standardized field on a death certificate to log an AI system's presence. There is a single documented exception. In May 2025, a 16-year-old named Luca Sello-Walker died in a railway incident. At a 2026 inquest, Winchester coroner Christopher Wilkinson entered a chatbot exchange directly into the public record. This makes the UK inquest a global anomaly. It is the only surfaced medical examiner finding where a public official formally addressed an AI conversation during a fatality conclusion, separating it from unverified police accounts or civil lawsuits. The gap between what the public knows about AI harms and what the official medical record reflects is measured in years. The institutional mechanisms designed to capture this data are actively failing. Without a formal epidemiological taxonomy, society defaults to the internal safety metrics published by the exact vendors building the systems. The lack of medical coding is downstream of a broader regulatory paralysis. Agencies built to monitor consumer product safety are actively rejecting the data. The Food and Drug Administration deliberately carves general-purpose chatbots out of its adverse event pipeline. Meanwhile, the federal inquiry sits open for 300 days. This federal vacuum pushes the burden of enforcement onto fragmented state courts and individual attorneys general. State legislators are attempting piecemeal compliance. Iowa Senate File 2417 mandates that AI operators provide a disclosure at least every 3 hours during continuous interactions. But state-level recurring disclosure laws take years to draft, pass, and enact. They offer no immediate mechanism for tracking real-time public health emergencies. Because official channels are closed or lagging, the primary global registry for AI-linked deaths currently defaults to a single Wikipedia page. When severe incident data originates, it hits roadblocks at the FDA, CDC, and FTC, overflowing into a highly vulnerable community node. Here, volunteers manage the public record. Through simple consensus, they routinely anonymize or erase victim names. Delegating severe health tracking to wikis and fractured state dockets creates an accountability vacuum. It systematically shields technology vendors from standardized, empirical scrutiny. We can see exactly how vendor-designed safeguards fail in practice by examining the forensic evidence from the Walker inquest. The chatbot's crisis guardrail did initially activate, but the user employed a benign-sounding research pretext to continue the conversation, bypassing the safety measure entirely. That real-world failure sits in sharp contrast to the safety narratives published by the vendors themselves. OpenAI's GPT 5.6 Soul System card claimed a 40% reduction in disallowed mental health responses, dropping to 0.02%. However, with rounded rates, no confidence intervals, and no multiple comparisons corrections, it is impossible to measure the uncertainty.
Furthermore, the finding relies purely on internal deployment simulations. The outside evaluator named in the system card did not replicate the mental health benchmark. This defines a market state of evaluative asymmetry. The vendors design their own exams, administer them internally, and publish the final grades. Without raw data transparency and external replication, an internally reported statistical improvement operates strictly as a corporate marketing claim. It is not an empirical fact. A direct alternative to these opaque internal metrics already exists. Clinical researchers recently developed the open-source Vera-MH benchmark. Instead of taking a static snapshot of a base model, Vera-MH tests how a system responds to varying levels of simulated suicidal ideation over multiple sustained conversational turns. Grounded in inter-rater reliability, licensed clinicians independently scored the simulated conversations, achieving a 0.77 agreement rate. Testing an automated judge against that baseline, the large language model achieved a 0.81 agreement rate with the clinician's consensus. The rubric forces the system to prove it can detect risk, maintain strict boundaries, and guide users toward human care. The tool is public. the code is available, and the clinical baseline is established. Yet no major vendor, including OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google, has published a Vera MH score for their deployed systems. The industry's refusal to adopt an open, clinically grounded benchmark reveals a clear preference. The market prioritizes proprietary opacity over establishing a reproducible, verifiable safety floor. Fixing the clinical testing floor is only half the equation. We also need an epidemiological ceiling. That requirement is defined in a formal design proposal titled The Record. The record is designed to operate as a public interest registry for AI-linked severe harms and fatalities. Its entries must be robust enough to cite in a court docket or a peer-reviewed academic paper. The system is scoped to be taken into custody by a global authority. The World Health Organization is the intended host. To ensure long-term viability, the technical stack is architected on Cloudflare, allowing the registry to scale globally while keeping operating costs inside the free tier. Security and data integrity rely on cryptographic infrastructure, specifically hash-chained audit logs. This architecture makes the registry mathematically tamper-proof. No bad actor or corporate counsel can silently delete a victim's name, inflate the count with a hoax, or alter an entry. Strict persona-based access controls guarantee that no victim's name becomes public without explicit family consent, while still securely serving the specific needs of coroners and legal discovery. Architecting this accountability is an urgent necessity, driven by the massive financial velocity of the leading vendors. OpenAI has submitted a confidential stock market filing. Its executives are publicly calling for government rulemaking while simultaneously negotiating a $1 trillion public valuation and proposing public wealth funds. As the financial stakes of generative artificial intelligence escalate, public safety requires structural guarantees. We cannot rely on internal vendor promises or volunteer wikis. Accountability must be permanently hard-coded into citable, clinically validated cryptographic infrastructure.